All right. Hi, welcome back. So in this episode, we'll try to create a smarter notification system than what Laravel provides out of the box. That will give us some additional functionality. I have noticed that I didn't remove the base controller, which I always do. So let us remove that. And I have also decided to go back to the traditional setup where everything is in the app folder. All right, so the use case here is basically that let's assume I have created a model called discussion, and discussions, you can think of them as a blog post. Basically, you have your blog post and then you have comments, which are comments, but these are if you're trying to come up with a solution to a problem within a company, you would have a discussion, people could chip in ideas. We may or may not implement the actual app logic there, but what we are mostly interested in is the notification. So let us create a new route. Notification controller, this controller, index. Let's just roll with that for now. Let's simplify that. Come on, simplify that. Okay, so let's create our index methods and nope. And we will, since we don't have any, never mind, we just have user, and our user will be hard-coded for now. Okay, not this user, come on. Our beautiful user, yeah. What we want to do is send them a notification when there is a new comment has been submitted to the discussion. Let's notify the owner. Okay, so we have a user and we want to send them a notification. You may know that Laravel, it has the notification system built in. So all we need to do is use notifiable in the user. And we are using that. So this trait exposes two things, basically. Has database notifications, which is a set of 3 methods that define relationship, as well as routes notification, which handles the logic for dispatching the notification. All right, so let's say that, and let us create this notification first. New discussion comments notification. Let's drop the new. Okay. Discussion comment notification. So this will get the comment model and the discussion model. Let us remove this boilerplate here. The return type. And let's leave these bad boys here. All right. We may also want to make these public or protected. It depends on what you want. If you make them public, Laravel will automatically pull them to your view files and stuff. But I prefer to be explicit when it comes to stuff like that. All right. Sure, let's implement should queue. Okay, so let us also create a route for notifications or mails. Let's yeah, it's whatever. Let's just call them notifications. And I will add another folder for the discussion, and we'll add a blade file called new folder, new comments.blade.php. And this can be like super basic. We can just do something like that and remove the spaces because it's a markdown file and this is actually important here. To discussion name. Well, since we don't have the actual model declaration because I was too lazy to build it, we can, I think title makes more sense. Yeah, okay, whatever, it doesn't matter. We have this notification here. And from our notification class, I will just remove this thing and defer to the markdown. That's exactly what we wanted to do. Smart suggestion, Copilot. All right, this will return a mail message. We can also add, our subject here or something. Yep. All right. That's fine. But we want to do more than just send an email. We also want to have a place in the app where the user can actually see their notifications. So obviously, we could just add the database here as the documentation specifies. And then we also need to create this notifications table. Okay. So we can see that there is this two database methods that will just save everything in the database. So let's add this method to database. And this just, we just have to return data, and Laravel will save it in a JSON file. So you would just, do something like title, and then, we can, we can attach the title here. And this will return, this will return an array. Okay. So that's great. The problem with this solution is that, the name of the discussion may change. And when you look at your notifications in app, you'll see a stale link. And maybe, your URL is generated based on the flag. It wouldn't make sense, but let's just roll with this, right? Let's say that our URL to this, sure. I know, sometimes it feels like they're listening to you, but yeah, let's say that the slug is dependent on the title and you update the title, so the URL changes. This would render this entry in our database pretty much useless because it would have stale data, it would confuse the customer. So that's not ideal. And on top of that, there's some more things to consider. For example, let's say that this discussion is super important, and when there's a new comment, it needs to get to that person as soon as possible. So, you may want to add like a phone to text or something like that, right? To send them the text right away. But we want to allow the user to actually select whether they want to, be notified via text or via email or, via all of them. We never know what the user may want. So our system should give user the flexibility to customize where they want to get this notification, on what channel do they want to get it, basically. With this solution, we cannot do anything, right? We'd have to create some custom logic and then we'd have to add it for every single notification in the system, which isn't ideal. What we really need is a good notification system. So let's start with handling the database and how Laravel utilizes this table to save data. So we can see, oh, that's annoying. Okay, let me just copy my timestamps here. Okay, so, we can assume for like this specific example and for our app, the only person that will get the notifications in app is the user. So we may just remove the UID. We can just add the regular ID. Then we can add the foreign ID for the user. And, we obviously do not want to save the data here because of the, title changing issue. We can leave this here. Maybe, it will come in handy later on. However, that's unlikely. We can change the data to JSON. For now, let's leave it and make it nullable. All right, so we don't need the morph here. Instead of the type as a string, we will use unsigned small integer. The red hat is completely cool. Sometimes I also like to add like viewed add. So, when you like click on the drop down, it would basically remove the pink dot from the drop down, but the notifications would still be marked, with like a different background color, basically. But for our example here, we don't really need that. All right, so this would be our new notifications table that would have a proper setup to satisfy, some of our expectations. However, the problem here is that we still need to associate external data with this notification because, we may want to have a link to the actual comment, right? So we cannot just like store the discussion. We also need to store the comment. So in order to do this, we need to create another table. And this table, make migration, this would be just notification models. And this would hold the relationship between our notification and the rest of the app, the rest of the models. I let me just rename this because my OCD is killing me. I don't actually have an OCD, but you know what I mean. Create notification models table. That's great. Okay. Now it's, you know, it's a bit nicer on the eyes, like it follows some schema. Let's remove the boilerplate, and we may want to update the steps to not included. Okay, we just need to create this table. So let us create the definition for it. It will obviously need an ID. It will need a reference to the notification. And, you know, because like this model will be polymorphic, so we could use the, oh, there is numeric morphs. Wait, let me just check the, nope, that's not what I want. I thought something was changed. So yeah, my problem with morphs is that by default, it will create a string. So, you know, you'll have your model type and model ID. The problem here is that, I mean, it's not a big problem for, you know, a lot of use cases. However, I'm not a fan of like storing the model as a string in the database, because there are two approaches to this, right? So you'd have your test type and your test ID. So approach one is to save it as fully qualified name. Models comments, and the other one is you would create like a map that would allow you to just use the comment name. I just prefer to use ints. They are faster, and working in a project where the database performance is, you know, we utilize database pretty heavily, so I just like to think about stuff like that in advance. So let us just manually create an assigned small integer for the model type, and for an ID for the model ID. We do not need timestamps here, and obviously on the down method we need to specify if exists notification. Okay, that's cool. So, you know, that seems to be a good start. So let us migrate the database. Oops. Oh, right. It's create, not table. I'm sorry. Okay, and now it's worked. So back to our example. We won't use the notifiable trait. We just want to use the routes notification because we'll be implementing our own database notification, channel. So we just want to use the routes notification in our user model. That's great. So now for the relationship, you know, user has many notification. We just need to be sure to use. Wait, didn't I create? Oh, right. Yeah, we need to create the model manually because I started with the Laravel comment to generate that. To generate that migration, obviously. Okay, so it's notification, and yeah, let me just paste this here and use notification as the name of this class. Okay, so now we can go back here and obviously add our relationship. All right, back to our controller. Now we can add our code to actually dispatch the notification. Okay, and because we do not have any comments or notifications, let me just create a new one. Discussion create. Okay, so now they won't be nulls, and let me just change this to first, and now this should, it's valid. Okay, so what we need to do now is we need to look what Laravel exactly does in the notifications. Okay, now we need to replace our database here with our custom implementation of the database notification driver. So let us create a new folder in the app called notification channels. And here we will create a new class called database notification channel. All right. And from what I remember, any notification channel just have to implement the send method, and it will get two params. The first param will be notifiable. The second param will be the notification. Not this notification. Notification from Illuminate notifications. Yeah, this one. And in our app, we know that the notifiable will always be the user, so we can just type in that. Okay, so now we'll get the data from that notification by calling the to database on notification, and we'll also pass the notifiable. So here, what we could do is we could just, return an array, or we could, we could create some kind of DTO to make it, more safe. But for, this simple example, I think we can just go away and define like two keys here. One would be for what we want to save in our notification model. So this would be data. And then the other one would hold any related data. So for example, this discussion. And in the data, we would save the type of the notification. But yeah, we don't really want to hard code that, right? So let's create a new folder in the app. And let's create an enum. Notification type. And we cannot use the template. Okay. Enum. So this will be an int-backed enum. And, we'll just add new discussion comments equals 0. I think our composer, used PHP 8.0. We are using 8.1. So I just bumped the version. Okay. Now we can use our notification type, new discussion comments. And that's great. Let me just disable this inspection because I hate it. All right. Come on. Okay. So, now we know that we'll be able to get two things from two database call. Right, because we defined here, we'll get the data and we'll get the models. So, models equals data models and notification data. Okay. So now, knowing that notifiable is our user, we can create a new notification and we can just paste the notification data. And let me just verify that. Sorry, wrong migration. We just need user ID, type, and the rest is nullable or filled by default. That is great. Okay, so this should work. And now we'll need to assign models. Notification. So, we could do something like that, which would generally work, except that we don't use the class name for the model type. But yeah, okay, let's start with that. Because we decided to use ints instead of strings for the type of polymorphic relationship, we will need to define something that is called something that's called a morph map. So if we go to our app service provider, in the boot methods, we can add relation. I think it's this one. Enforce morph map. And here we can just do a mapping of an int to a class. The problem is that it wouldn't work with 0, so we have to start with 1. So 1 will be our, let's reserve 1 for the user, which we won't use for this example, but going forward. 2 will be our discussion, and 3 would be our comment. Okay, so what is cool about this is that now we can just take an instance of any model that's in that map, and we can call getMorph class on it, and it will return that that int for us, which is super cool. So yeah, here we would just replace the model with get morph class, and this would insert the data to the database. However, in order to do that, we obviously need to maybe let's call it model to avoid the confusion. We can go to the notification model, and here we need to define models. Yeah, okay, it will be actually easier to just create a function like assign models, and here we would pass them an array of models. So here we'll get an array. I don't think it has to return anything. We can paste that code here, and we'll just use an old, like a regular insert to the database. Insert notification models. Oh, db table insert data, and here we'll just append to the data. So notification ID is this ID, model type. Okay, yeah, that's pretty much what I wanted. I think we can use like get primary key instead. Get primary key. And now we can do like get key. Get key name. That works. Huh. Oh, I'm just yeah, it is get key, but we need to have an instance of the model. So now if we do get key, we'll get what we wanted. So yeah, just rename that to get key. Here we know that this is an ID. We can do like a safeguard here that if there is no model, we'll just continue. And I think that looks quite right. So now in our channel, we are assigning the models. I think that looks pretty good. However, usually when you have any notification, you also want to broadcast it. So I will create a new event. It will be called notifications, notification broadcast event. And we can see it. Oh, I always do it wrong. It's the other slash. Okay. So now we have our event here. And what we'll get here, we'll always get the user, right? And we can promote it. We'll always get the notification as well. Okay, let's remove this thing here. It it will be broadcasted on a new private channel. We can roll with this. And we can, well, that's close, but yeah, we'll just use notification to be this notification. Normally I would wrap this in a resource, but for our, you know what, we'll wrap it in a resource in a sec. Yeah, let's just broadcast this as notification. Now we obviously would want to go into our broadcasting and for the love of God, I can never remember how it's called. It's channels. So since we're not using this one, we can just use notifications and then the ID. And we can see that working here. That matches with our definition. This obviously should broadcast, and you would integrate this with anything that you want, like Pusher or Ably. So now what's left here is that we need to broadcast that. We need to broadcast exactly that. This two others is not necessary. And let me just split this into 2 lines. All right. I think this would solve, this would, that's all that we need to do here. Now we obviously want to utilize that class here. All right, so that is great. And that should be working. We'll do the tests in another episode probably. So now let us create this resource here so we can control the data. Let's create like a notification resource. And here we can use that resource on that notification. Cool. And here, we'll just want to return some of the stuff, which is exactly that's scary. Like if you think about the AI and how quickly it's advancing, it is a bit scary. We can add the user ID here as well. All right. The thing that's remaining is the user still cannot customize what notifications channels he can use here. Again, going back to that example, maybe it's a super important notification and you need to send them a text so they can react immediately to it. So for that, we would need to obviously create a new model. Let's call it notification preferences. That would work. Okay. So here we would obviously want to have a relationship to the user ID. We would want to customize this on a notification base. So, in order to do that, we would need to use that notification type here. So that was unsigned small integer in the other table. So let's use the same thing here. And then I'm not a fan of this, but we could just do like JSON, or you know what, let's just go with string and just put channels here. It will be kind of hacky, but I don't want to create like another model to only store the channels for notification preference. I think it's an overkill, but you could implement this in your project. You could just create like notification preferences, channels, and then associate notification preference ID with channel. But we won't need that here. All right. So in our user model, we need to create this new relationship to notification preferences. This has many notification preference. Let's add the return type. Notification. I don't like that it's pluralized. Let's make it not pluralized, and yeah, that's it. Okay. So now we'll do something cool. We need to, that's interesting, but that's not what we need. We need to create a function to get notification channels, because in every notification there is this VM method that people usually like just skip and never think about this. I know why I said that, but okay, whatever. Let's just type in that this is a user, and here we would want to return some function on the notifiable model, which is our user, to get the notification channels. And this would return an array. Okay, so here, we need to specify what type of notification that is. So it's new discussion comment. Let me just add a return type here so it will stop screaming. I'm not thinking anymore. Okay, now it's working, and we should accept this notification type in the parameter. If you don't like this duplication, you can define like a variable, private notification type, something like that, and then just defer to this. That's fine. You could add a constant. You can do whatever you want. So yeah, now we need to do some magic, right? Because basically, if there is a preference in the database, we should use that. If there are none, we should pull default preferences from the notification. Okay, so let's start with the default one. I think, the simplest thing that we can do is we can just defer this this logic to the notification type itself. So we could create a method that would return default drivers. So in our enum, we can add this function, right? Default drivers. We know that it should return an array, and we will match this, and if it's self new discussion comment, what happened here? Wait, new discussion self. Yeah, I think PHP Storm's autocomplete for this is kind of broken. Yeah, it seems so. Okay. So our default driver here may be our database notification channel, and that's it. And we can add like a default for everything. That would be like an empty array, or just like database notification channel maybe. It doesn't make sense in like this configuration, but let's say that we'll also want mail for this. Yeah, I know that it's never reached. That's fine. Going back here. We basically need to do a simple query, right? So that's pretty interesting. Yeah, Copilot is crazy. Like, that's super weird. If there is a preference, we should return the channels of it. Create notification preference. Yeah, it is called channels. However, channels is a string. So let's just call toDriver array on this notification preference model. Let's make guarded to empty. Okay, toDriver array. This will obviously return an array, and our channels would be a CSV list of channels, and then we'd have our drivers, and then for each channels as channel, we would push something to the okay, let's leave it here, and then we'd return drivers. Yeah, because the channels is a string, we obviously need to explode it. So we have an array, but then we need to map whatever we saved there to an actual class, because we want to have a class representation here, an array of valid classes that can be used to send out this notification. So, we could save it in the database as a CSV list of strings. So you'd get something like, 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And then we would transform it to something like mail, database, notification channel, text, stuff like that, right? So yeah, let's make it work. So for stuff like that, I like to use enums. Let me just copy this one. Let's call it database. Why database? What am I talking? Notification channel type. And this should obviously be a PHP file. Okay. So here, let's just start with something like mail and database. And our function will be called like get driver. And this would, I know what this will return. Yeah, basically that's the only thing that I would change is it should be null by default. Okay. So here, what we can do is we can try and cast that int to that enum, notification channel type, try from channel, and we'll just get driver. The only thing that we need to handle is that sometimes, I mean, this won't probably happen, but let's just assume that this will be, the casting won't happen and we'll get a null here. So this should, this will just return null. And yeah, let's handle this a different way. Notification channel, driver, notification channel. Okay. So yeah, this will return us this driver array. And now going back to our user. Yeah, that's cool. This should actually do the trick for us. I know that it's like, it's just code and code and we don't really see what's happening, and that's dumb on my end. But it is what it is, right? So notification type, new discussion comments. Okay, let me just run the migration. It weirdly worked. I was like, that's weird. I was sure that it would fail, but no, it did not. Okay, so that is cool. So by default, it's returning these drivers, right? However, if we were to create a new notification preference with type of 0 and channels would be 0 as well. And now if we were to call this again, we would only get mail here. Okay, that is cool. Let me just clear this up. Okay, let's add a new channel type here. So for example, text is 2. We won't have, a proper driver for that. But let's just, play with this. So now if we first update the channels to be 0 and 2, and if we call this, oh right, because we need to restart Tinker. Now it will return mail and text, even though the default drivers are mail and database. So that's pretty cool, and it's extremely useful to have something like that in your app, because then you can create like an UI where you list all of your notifications, and then you can select that you want this and this to happen, basically. But let's remove that text from here. So let us just go to that notification test controller, and let's see what will happen. User first, when we try and send that notification. Discussion, comments, notification, comment first, discussion first. Get driver on notification preference 24. Right, obviously that's because we added text and then we removed it. But I added this to make this check here to prevent exactly this from happening. If you mail discussion, comment not found. Mail discussion. Okay, it should be notifications, discussion, new comment. Okay. Yeah, I mean, that's whatever. Doesn't really matter because we don't have. Oh, right. Okay, I know what we can do. So in our env file, we can mail. I think you can put like log here, and then it should be good. Okay, so now we can see that nothing happened, right? And from here we can read the notifications, which we didn't get any, because the only notification that this user had was mail. But now let us remove their preferences, and let's try and send that notification again. Yeah, okay, come on. Let's try that again. And now we can see our notifications here, which is super cool. Our type is there, our data is empty, redhat is empty, that's okay. And the only thing that's remaining is how we want to load, these related models from the relationship, from the notification. There is a couple of ways of doing that. The simplest one, and we'll just go with this one, because it's like 1:30 a.m. and I need to go to sleep. But we can go into details later if you guys are interested. Okay. We could just define normal relationships. So for example, what were we saving in that new comments notification? We were saving the discussion, right? So in our notification, we can create discussions or discussion. It depends on your app, because if you know that it will always be one discussion, morphed. Okay, let's just go with morphed with many, because sometimes you may have like two comments or two versions of a comment or anything like that, and I want to have like a unified API. So discussion would be morphed by many discussions by the notification models table. And before we do this, let me check if it was even saved, because it was. That's cool. Okay. I'm never like, always when I do the morphed or morphed by many or whatever, any polymorphic relationships, I don't feel like certain that this will work. Discussions, yeah. Okay. Oh, right. Okay. Yeah. The second parameter is the name and the third one is table. So maybe now. And it did work. We get our discussion. So the last thing to do is to go to resources, and we can do like discussion resource. I will just return ID because it doesn't have anything in our database, but you would fill this with any related data. And here we could do something like discussions collection this when loaded discussions. So this would attach the discussion data to the notification, which you could pull from the front end. And we can even like add with here. It's kind of dangerous, but if you know what you're doing, that's fine. But if you're uncareful with this, it can cause a lot of queries, a lot of additional queries in places where you don't need them. So yeah, now whenever we fetch a notification, we'll get our notification, and then we'll get any related models here, which is super cool. And then your API that's consuming your phone consuming this API would know what this type is and how to render it with all of the related data, and then they would be able to handle when stuff is removed and everything like that. Because you could do something like there was a new comment to your discussion, and then we could add the discussion name, and we could also attach the comment if we want to, and this would all work. And yeah, I think this is pretty great. In the next episode, we can take this a step further and give user the ability to mute certain resources. For example, maybe you created a discussion a long time ago, but people are still commenting on it, and you don't really want to hear about this. So this is what we'll handle in the next episode. As always, I hope you guys had a fun time. I know this episode could have been a bit chaotic, but yeah, I hope it wasn't. And let me know what you thought of this, and have a great day. Bye.